We want to welcome you to Millionaire Bracket Fantasy Football. Hopefully you know Charles Taylor, the Atlanta area attorney who's the founder and CEO of the company. Charles' story, the founder's story, Charles began playing fantasy football upon entering law school in 1992, enjoying the excitement and draw it had on him and his friends. 8 of the original law school league members are still involved in his law school's league today. There are very few times in the year that generate as much excitement as the start of fantasy football season. This is Charles' story, and I'm just reading it to you so that you understand kind of the foundation of where Charles was, how he got here, and where he sees this exciting new business going. Around 2010, Charles began seeing advertisement for FanDuel. We all know what FanDuel is. After learning more about their offering, he decided to sign up for an account, realizing soon that they offered a plethora of games across all sporting games. However, the games that attracted Charles were large money games, where you could win $200,000 in one day. After playing these games, Charles realized, while fun, the chances of winning any money were extremely low. Firstly, the sheer number of entries that he had doubts for was significant, coupled with the fact that about 2% of players are categorized as expert players, based on their experience and the information at their disposal. What's more is that these experts can submit multiple entries, making it that much harder for the average Joe to compete. Charles loved the ability to win large grand prizes in fantasy football settings, but only wished that there was a way for it to be more level and for one to not have to defeat so many people at one time. Fast forward 6 months. While watching the NC2A March Madness bracket, he saw how teams were able to advance to the Final Four quickly without having to defeat every other team in the field. It was at that point he thought that if there were only a way to integrate this bracket concept with fantasy football, where the playing field can be leveled and a player can win serious money without having to best every other player every week, that would certainly be a viable gaming proposition. It was at that point Charles began to formulate the Millionaire Bracket Fantasy Football game plan, seeking to capture what is great with the existing fantasy games while simultaneously seeking to fill any void in the marketplace. One such void is the lack of cohesiveness between the fantasy players themselves. In other games, the players are known simply by usernames. For example, the thought was if there was a way to bring all fantasy players under one roof, where they can access games, communicate with others, and even brand their own fantasy football identity by naming their franchise and even designing their team helmet logo, that would certainly be filling a void which seems to be unaddressed at this point. So he got to work. And after many drafts and many years, have come up with a concept that, as in his words, I believe is cutting edge and fun and offers great odds and great value in a season-long fantasy model. This is different. For those of you who aren't part of the 8 of his law school league members who are still playing and haven't been exposed to any of this, you're going to find it, as I did, I think, to be really exciting. Now, there's 3 unique games that are involved in this. The overarching concept is called the Millionaire Bracket Fantasy Football League. The Millionaire Bracket Fantasy Football League is over 16 weeks. It starts off in week 1 with about 65,000 players. In week 1, you got 32,000 going against 32,000 players. Next week, half of them have lost. So week 2, you have 16,000 players going against 16,000, and you see how it comes down. Every week they're being losers. Now, they aren't losers here. Anybody who doesn't win their weekly competition automatically gets enrolled into the community league for weekly winners. And there's 101 payouts every week. So you don't lose. Even though you may have lost that one-on-one competition at some certain point, you automatically are enrolled in what many people think is going to be probably as exciting or more exciting because of the ability to win more quickly than the bracket league contest. Now you see in week 8, the losers win $250 each. And then week 9 and so forth. You get down to Sweet 16 in week 13 where you have 8 players going against 8 players. And then the final Elite Eight, and then the Final Four, and then final you have the playoffs. Now, it's exciting to envision being one of those final two players playing for $1 million, and the one who doesn't prevail gets $500,000. But here's another thing that's really exciting: the Gauntlet Room. The Gauntlet Room is where you do that. You throw it on the gauntlet and you challenge somebody, and it's more of a one-on-one play. I can see where people will put, say, money in PayPal, and they could even wager on that with the winner take all. I can also see that type of Gauntlet Room play would be exciting. Remember what Charles said earlier about it being a communal league where you're going to pick your helmets and you're going to pick your designs? Well, you can also pick the league you're in. You can pick 16 teams, 10 friends, 8 friends, whatever you want for your league. You can give your league a name. And that league then becomes, as it was, is for you now, all your buds who play. Now, in this scenario, Charles has come up with Skype-like interface where if you are in a Gauntlet Room and if you're taking somebody on and if you've thrown the gauntlet down and you've gone to PayPal and you said, oh, yeah, winner takes this, and all your buds want to watch you and groan with you and get excited with you. Those of us who have played football in college or for high school or whatever, the thing we miss is not football games. The thing we miss is the camaraderie. And that's the difference between this and FanDuel and others, is you build a league. You choose helmet colors. You represent yourself. You bring other people in. And they cheer, and they groan, and they give you hell, and why'd you do this, and why'd you do that? The idea of Red Zone for 8 hours on a Sunday and watching different games and seeing your players how they do and scoping out your scores and groaning and laughing and celebrating with all your buds involved is a big part of Charles' vision for fantasy football. This is also a season-long competition. It isn't broken up into every week you buy a new deal and every week you have to go through the groans and pains. This is a season-long competition. You're always in it, and your friends and family can be in it with you. So it brings back that camaraderie in a really cool manner. Now, here's a look at some of the differences. A real quick look, 15 items. I'll go through them quickly. You have MBFL, Charles Company, DraftKings, and FanDuel. You're going to compete with 80 to 100,000 players at any given time in the one-week competition of FanDuel and DraftKings. Or you compete one player a week in a season-long competition, because if you lose, you're automatically entered into the community league. Number 3, weekly winners auto-progress for 17 weeks with the payouts beginning in week 8. You remember that. You don't have any ability to do that with DraftKings or FanDuel. Week 16, got $1 million, and the runner-up receives $500,000. Number 5, weekly losers, as I said, auto-join for free the community league for the remainder of the season. 100 weekly cash prizes, including a $25,000 top cash prize. There's defensive player points, individual defensive players, and you select one from each of these, just like you do in FanDuel and DraftKings. Instead of selecting a defense, now you're going to select individual players. It heightens the game. Interceptions mean something. Sacks mean something. Individual stats and your ability to cheer across the spectrum, just like you do in offense. Proprietary social network. There's nothing like this. You have a Skype-like meets Facebook-like sports experience. Your social fantasy football experience is now shared across the plane with other people in your league in a real exciting, vibrant, technological way through the 16 weeks that you're going to be competing. It's a weekly Winter Madness, March Madness-like excitement because there's head-to-head competitions. Head-to-head competitions. Number 10, MBFL Fantasy Football social network page. Now, this is the thing that we believe really separates Charles from everybody else. Yes, you have a season-long experience. You've got 3 different leagues. You've got some exciting play. But this is where you socialize it. This is where it becomes part of your community, part of your family. This is where folks become involved. And there's even going to be a celebrity aspect. If your 16-member league or 8 or 10-member league decides that you're watching, you're going to focus on the Jets, or you're going to focus on the New York Giants, and you want a celebrity, some player, retired player, to be on there for 20 minutes in your Skype-like interface where you can talk to them, ask them questions. It's available for an extra fee that goes to the celebrity player. We figure that the celebrity players are going to be able to make $250,000 a year by involving themselves. You don't think Terrell Owens needs that $250,000? Or other players who have been great and are exciting and have wonderful personalities. So as a league, as an individual, as a personalized member of this social media fantasy football league, there's opportunities that are not available today to make it a richer, more exciting experience. And remember, number 11, this is yearly league play. There will be 60 or 70 leagues as we grow. This isn't just a one-league competition. As we take subscriptions, remember there's 57 million players in 2015. 57 million players. So for us to have 60, 70 leagues is fairly simple to visualize. It's $9 a week. It's $150 for a 16-week NFL season as compared in FanDuel to $25 a week. $450 for a 16-week season, and you pay that weekly. It is, number 14, it is a season-long league removed from scrutiny. Now, this is what Charles has deduced. As an attorney, he's looked at it, and he believes that this being a social experience, and it's a year-long experience, rather than gambling one week, gambling another week, you have a social network page that's yours. You've designed it. You've designed your helmets. You've drafted a league. You've created your teams. You're involved in a Skype-like interface. This isn't like FanDuel and DraftKings, who are weekly games, weekly gambling, as different states' attorneys generals have recognized. The season-long league and all of the other components we're talking about, this is a true game, and it's removed from regulatory scrutiny. And as FanDuel and DraftKings, we suggest that as they go through their troubles, all that's going to do is elevate more and more MBFL. So it's going to start off as a great differentiator, standing alone, and we believe as time goes by, it's quickly going to bubble up to really the only game of choice. Charles loves the fact that he's putting it all under one roof, that the entire social network side, the fantasy football side, the celebrity sides, all of the different components that are going to come in there and enable you to communicate with others while exciting things are going on in your life. It's a missing component, and it's a necessary component. But in gambling sites, they can't be bothered with it. In a community action site, of course it's going to be all under one roof, which we believe MBFL is. Let's talk about the numbers. Here's a 2013 article from Forbes, very respected contributor, projecting that it's going to be a $70 billion market in the future. So now we're establishing the size of market. It's an enormous market. And as we go down, we see that there's a fantasy football industry from whom we've extrapolated numbers. The number of fantasy sports players in the U.S. and Canada is 57 million players. And we're going to talk about growth in that number. And we're going to talk about the excitement in how much money they spend and how much is available to MBFL. This is the curve. This is 2015 with $2.6 billion being spent. 2016, 2017, on up to 2022 being probably at around $16 billion, going up to a projected $77 billion that Forbes was alluding to in 2025. Now, we're going to launch in 2017. We're not launching this year. We're launching in 2017. Charles plans to sell the company in 5 years, thereby enriching his investors and himself through the sale of a successful company. So 2017 launch, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. So we're out 2022 when we sell it. Let me pause for a second. How fast did the last 5 years go in your life? Went by like that. The next 5 years is going to be no different. And when Charles sells this company, which we're going to talk about in a minute, the projections are staggering. So if we are out in 2022, if we just take $14 billion and we focus on the spend being $14 billion. Now, we're going to get into a graph in just a second, but if MBFL only generates 5% of that $14 billion, which we're going to share with you in a graph in a minute, over the next at the end of 5 years, each investor will receive 138 times their money back. The projected return on investment with 5% market share. So that projection would mean a $1,000 investment would yield $138,000. A $100,000 investment would yield $13,800,000. This is the kind of return that people at FanDuel received. This is the kind of return that when people come in early, the projections are these are the type of returns that they'll receive. What's the difference here? Now, there's an offer. We want you to invest. For every $150 invested, you also receive a spot. So not only do you get an investment, which we'll talk about, but you also reserve a spot. So $1,500, $3,000 would receive multiple spots, obviously. The way we're taking in money right now, the amount of money that's coming in is quite generous. They're from folks just like you. We are not ready to launch our funding source, which is called crowdfunding. We'll be ready to launch crowdfunding in about 90 days. And that crowdfunding investment we'll talk about in a minute is significant. The return is going to be, we're projecting it to be significant. But the money that comes in now will give you a receipt for it. We need that money to build the company. We need that money for attorneys, accountants, and specialty business folks who focus on the Securities and Exchange Commission because we have to go through all those legal hoops to register for crowdfunding. So if you give us $1,000 within 14 months, we'd probably say 8 months after we launch crowdfunding, we'll come back to you and say, thanks for the $1,000, here's $2,000 back. Or instead of doubling your money, you can convert this receipt and accept the terms that we're going to show you in the crowdfunding investment. You have a choice, and this is called a convertible note that gives you that choice. Now, the way it works is this. We have something called Title III crowdfunding that we're involved with. Title III crowdfunding enables 200 million people in the United States. It's a brand new law started May 16th. 200 million people to now invest in a company. $200, $2,000, it's up to them. We plan to raise about $5 or $6 million from the crowd. Think about it. There's 57 million people who play fantasy football. You don't think there's going to be a few thousand people who look at this and say, I'm going to get on the ground floor. This is brilliant. Just like you're thinking right now. And those people will make an investment in the company. And what they receive is 2 promises to pay. The first promise to pay is they get 10 times their money back. So if they invest $1,000, they'll get $10,000 back out of the profits of the company. The second promise to pay is when Charles sells the company in 5 years, 10% of the sales price will be put in a fund to pay back the crowdfunders. So it'll at least be another 10 times. And we'll talk about the growth in that in just a minute. So remember, we talked about 2 promises to pay. They're highlighted here. Here's the first promise to pay. Crowdfunding is going to put in $1 million initially. So we're going to repay you 10 times or $10 million. The second promise to pay comes from how much we sold the company for. So let's talk about that 5% number we spoke about in a minute ago. Remember we said $14 billion we're focusing on? 5% of that is $700 million. Is there anybody who doesn't think that in 5 years after launch, with all the 60-minute articles and all the way we differentiate ourselves from those other people, that we're not going to be able to do at least $700 million in revenue? We're going to spend $400 million on advertising and getting the word out there and running the company, leaving a profit of 266. This is all projected in 5 years after we launch. So it's 260 million in profit. Selling the company, there's formulas, and you're going to expect to get at least, right here, 5 times profit. So if you multiply this, 200 million times 5, you get $1.2 billion he's going to sell the company for. He's going to take 10% of that, or 128 million, and put it in a fund to repay the people who put in $1 million. That's you. You're going to be part of that. That means you're going to get 128 times your money back. Doesn't matter how much you put in. There's only $1 million going into this crowdfunding round right now. So you're going to get, everybody gets 128 times their money back if we're able in 5 years to sell this under this 5% scenario. So if you invest $10,000, you're going to get $1.3 million. It's 138 times your money back. Think about it. Will you ever have another opportunity like this? And that's really the question you have to ask. Now, to help us get the word out, we need to get the word out. We're going to let you kind of earn your investment back. It's a finder's fee program. You tell somebody they invest, you get 10% of their investment, and it's paid back to you as soon as that money clears the company account. Charles has already paid out finder's fees to people for introductions. If you get 10 folks, which why can't you? You know how many people you know who play fantasy football. Go to them. They'll love it just like you do. When they invest, 10% comes back to you. If they each invest what you do, you take your investment off the table immediately. You've recouped your entire investment before this even starts. It's a great, well-thought-out opportunity with projections that are dynamic, and it's available to you right now. So what we ask you to do is contact Charles. You probably have Charles' contact information. If you don't, here it is. I want to thank you for spending the time with me today, and please call Charles. Thank you.